or repel them. As much as we like to think people won't judge a book by its cover, we know it's true.
As far as I can tell, the best definition of what neurodiversity is any form of differentiation in brain function.
We are here to discuss NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month.
This is the traditional versus independent publishing panel.
I'm really into the academic side of mythology as well as the more fun storytelling side.
When you hit somebody, it makes a distinct sound. If you hit them in a certain place, it makes a distinct sound.
Welcome to Writers Conduit, finding your online community.
Thank you so much, Sable. It is so exciting to be here as a part of Writers Conduit, and especially to participate in believable world building.
If some of this is a little, if you guys have questions or I'm going too fast, please let me know. I tend to talk very quickly.
What made you want to write for kids? This is kind of the inspiration.
So today what we're going to be covering is we're going to be talking about who can critique and kind of what are the different types of critiquers who are in the world around us.
So, for example, this is Pelagia, homeworld of the Sky Rays.
I've been doing creative writing workshops here where I live for a long time. It's always been this kind of format where we just set a timer, write whatever based on the prompt, and then go around open mic and just kind of read what we wrote.
So we're talking about cover art today. Cover art can attract readers or repel them. As much as we like to think people won't judge a book by its cover, we know it's true.
As far as I can tell, the best definition of what neurodiversity is any form of differentiation in brain function.
We are here to discuss NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month.
This is the traditional versus independent publishing panel.
I'm really into the academic side of mythology as well as the more fun storytelling side.
When you hit somebody, it makes a distinct sound. If you hit them in a certain place, it makes a distinct sound.
All right, hello everybody. How are you doing today? This is AmandaPandaSensi, and today we are going to be talking about how self-inserts are not the enemy. No, really. Sorry for my lack of makeup. I'm just like, I'm getting up early to do this, and I didn't quite put my face on. So I hope you all forgive me, and let me turn the light on like that. It's not quite my ring light, but I didn't really have a place to put that. So let's get over to, so I have my my co-host today. Let me grab them. And oh, well, we can see your hand, so let me switch that really quick. So, okay, so let's crop that left by, whoops, 2, yeah, all right. So let's see, 200, top by 300, right by 7, and left by, we don't need to see all of these things. Okay. Okay, and then we don't need to see my alt account. We had to really, natural light looks just fine? Okay. Hello, Scarlet Blaze TV. Welcome to the channel. It is really nice to have you.
That is Scarlet Blaze TV in the background there, closing
Oh.
the curtain for me.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Great start. Cool. Right.
Oh, I just noticed your ears. Those are cute.
Thanks. Been trying to wear them more on streams.
Yeah. All right. So let me actually show your name. We don't need to see my my little alt account. We really had to jerry rig this whole this whole situation because my gosh darn internet is being a butt. Oops. All right. Well, they can see you, and that is what's most important. So, okay. So, Raven, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm Raven. Also known as Sometimes Raven, repping the merch. I am a multifaceted streamer, mostly based around storytelling. I have written urban fantasy novels, and I am a professional self-insert writer. So I had to get in on this.
All right, excellent. So yes, so you say you're a professional self-insert writer? Like, have you professionally written self-insert?
I guess, yeah. Not like explicitly, but like I have a published novel, and I would consider some of the characters in that to be self-inserts of a kind. So yeah.
Okay. Right. So yeah, let
Oh,
me.
sorry. Did I? Oh, right. I see.
Yeah. So no. But yeah,
Forgot
just
to mention that.
are a family-friendly stream, so so please try to keep that in mind with language and topics. But yeah. Oh, hello, Lord Galacrond. Oh, Author Goddess is here. Hello. All right. So, well, to get us started, oh, and for anyone who's maybe new here, so my name is AmandaPandaSensi. I usually stream out of Yokohama, Japan, but for a limited time only, I'm going to be in the U.S. in my parents' house. Yesterday, we had my mom on for a quick little interview, and I think people had fun with that. But today we're going to really get into some writing stuff about a topic that is near and dear to my hearts, and actually near and dear to the hearts of more people than they'd probably like to admit. And that is self-inserts. So we're going to start off with a little slideshow that I've put together. And to do that, let me oops. Let me just, I still need to crop you a little bit. Let me do this. Well, that's from the top, so nope. And from the bottom, let's try 150. Nope. Let's try 150. We're gonna find that. Yeah, it's always really difficult when. Okay, there we go.
The sweet spot.
Spot.
Are you in OBS?
Yes, I am.
If you hold down the Alt key while you click and drag, it will crop it.
Back. So
you don't have to guess.
yeah, no, it's nope. I wish I could, but I can't, so I shan't. So
fair.
All right, so let's go over to my PowerPoint. Oh no, where did you go? What is this?
I am in the void.
You're in the void.
I'm a void creature.
What the heck? Whoops. Is this supposed to be you? This giant rectangle of...
Venus? Yeah, it looks like me.
Well, I guess, I don't, that's so weird. All right, window capture. Okay. I don't know where the rectangle of doom just went. It just disappeared. I'm sorry. Okay, we're just gonna start with the presentation.
That's okay. I'm here in spirit.
Yeah, they can still hear you, and when we switch back over to this, then they can see you. So, sorry, that's gonna be the important part. So, but they can still hear your lovely voice. So, anyway, so self-inserts aren't the enemy. No, really. It's not a Twitch stream without a little chaos, indeed. Okay, so let's get us started. Oops, if I could. Okay, so first question. What is a self-insert character anyway? So a self-insert or author self-insert is a fictional character who is recognizably the same person as the author of the story. Oftentimes they'll share the same name and appearance. And that's what we're going to be looking at, like specifically characters who are supposed to be actual representations of the author, not like being close to the author. Self-insert is usually used in these days a little bit derogatorily as a connotation of being gratuitous wish fulfillment on the part of the author. And we're going to be looking into that a little bit more, and I'm going to get rid of these little update thingies up here because they're annoying me. I'm doing dual screens, and it's very fun, but it's a little bit like... Anyway, I just lost chat. There's chat. Blah. All right. So now a self-insert is different from a fictional autobiography. That's when the author is using is telling a bit of their life story, but they've sensationalized it or fictionalized it in some way. But the line is kind of blurry. I would sort of say that Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-Five is sort of blurs that line because the unnamed narrator is very definitely Kurt Vonnegut, but the things that he depicts in that novel are a little bit are semi autobiographical, so there's a little bit of overlap there. So you hear self-insert and you might think, whoops, that I'm going back to the original panel. So wait, don't you mean an author surrogate? So not exactly. Author surrogates are a broader category that can include self-inserts. So an author surrogate is based on the author, but may also be a character that speaks to the author's real-world views, as opposed to speaking with their own voice. Of course, no character has their own voice. It's all the voice of the author. But there are some times when a character will say something that doesn't necessarily reflect the author's views on real world issues, especially if they're say an antagonist, or they are say trying to challenge. Wait, no. Gosh darn it. Sorry, I'm still getting used to this mouse. Or they say maybe are trying to wait, Lisa isn't meant to be Matt Groening? Yeah. I mean, so I say that Lisa Simpson is an example of an author surrogate, because she's often meant to like portray like what the writers think of any given situation without necessarily being like a stand-in for one of the authors. But I mean, I don't think that Matt Groening is a like, it's like a young child, a young female child in a yeah. So um some most famously, though, we have the author surrogate of Socrates from various writings of Plato. So we would have like, so Plato famously like wrote Socrates in to give like, supposedly Socrates' own like self-report, like his own teachings, but like, it was sort of Plato's words being like sort of funneled through Socrates, and it's like a bit of a situation. And another example would be Benjamin from George Orwell's Animal Farm. So now the question that a lot of people have about authors about self-insert is, whoops, isn't that a nice way of saying a Mary Sue, which is not a term that we really, that either Raven or I really really
I hate that term.
Okay, so in Miriam Segal's 2008 book, she wrote, "Would-be fanfiction writers are warned, Mary Sue is a very idealized version of the fanfiction author, too perfect for words, and at least according to many fanfiction readers, extremely annoying to read about. In other words, writing oneself into fanfiction is frowned upon by readers. Avoid the temptation of writing yourself into your fanfiction story." This is a load of crock, respectfully. But now it is true that there are characters that are annoying to read, and some of them do happen to be self-inserts. But we're going to look into more like why that is, and not and sort of decouple the idea that that self-inserts necessarily have to be bad characters or poorly written. So self-insert is just another type of character. And what a character is, if you boil it down to like base parts, is just a simplified version of a person. A person is a, complex, multifaceted individual. And while characters can be multifaceted, they're not as complex as a real life human being. I mean, if you were to like write a more realistic human into a story, there would probably be like a lot of contradictions, a lot of they would act more irrationally than like a lot of characters can act irrationally, but there's still a sense that they are part of this cohesive whole of the story, whereas like every person is like we all say that we're all like the main character of our own stories, so we're all interacting with each other in these very complex ways. So when you're writing what I'm gonna talk about this a little bit later, but we're going to talk about what it means to simplify a person into a character. So let's do a case study. So we have Dante Alighieri, of course, considered. So the Divine Comedy is a masterpiece of narrative poetry, but it is also self-insert Bible fanfic with some real person fic thrown in for flavor. Dante basically like, he put like actual people he didn't like into hell to like show that they were, not not up to snuff as far as they yeah, absolute legend, just like, yes, and Pope what's his face burned in hell for all eternity. It's like that he's like an Italian in the writing this in like the 1300s, and he like puts a pope in hell. It's like that's bold move. So so Dante is himself the main character of the story, and he goes through like personal growth and changes as he's taken through hell, purgatory, and heaven by various guides. So his character is, I would argue, supposed to be a bit of an everyman, because like even though he's going through this, like he's sort of playing like the everyman, the straight man against all of this fantastical spiritual awakening stuff, and like he has to like listen to all these guides, and they take him on this journey of spiritual awakening and discovery, and but so I would say that he wrote himself in. We don't really we see a bit of his character, like there's times where he's compassionate towards the sinners, and Virgil the poet scolds him because well, they knew what, they like don't pity the people in hell because they're their souls are forever, it's like they sort of like they were wicked people in life, so don't feel too bad for them. But we also see him in moments of great terror. He faints at multiple times and stuff like that. So we do get like a sense of maybe what his personality or something might be like, that he might be, in some instances, not for certain popes, I guess, but for some instances, he could be like compassionate. He's very, in awe. He's very like humble, or at least that's how his self-insert is portrayed to us. Of course, we don't know the actual man himself, so it's difficult to say. But we can like sort of maybe see glimpses of how he viewed himself through his writing, which I think is very interesting. There's another case study I want to bring up. Oh, I forgot to write the name down. Let me see. Let me just click through and. Oh no, it's Andrew Hussey. What a nightmare. So, so Andrew Hussey, the writer of the webcomic Homestuck, wrote himself as a character pictured here into the story, and he's a side character, not very he does feature in some plot crucial things, and I'm not going to get into the plot of Homestuck because we don't have all day. But basically, he writes himself as the sort of buffoonish kind of character. He he interacts with his own characters, and sort of like at first it's sort of just supposed to be a meta joke on some aspect of the thing, but then he gets drawn into his own story and gets like pulled into the drama of his own narrative. So it's a lot of one of the nice things about self-inserts is that there's a lot of chances for meta. So if you like that kind of thing. All right. Other notable self-inserts, like I mentioned before, Kurt Vonnegut and in Slaughterhouse-Five. Stan Lee in, I would say, all sorts of stuff. He's like cameos, but he's always very recognizably Stan Lee. He's not like playing another character per se. He's sort of like playing himself in that just happens to be in the story. And then for a more recent example, I'd say Darren Shan in the Cirque du Freak, the saga of Darren Shan, the 12-part young adult book series about a young man named Darren Shan who I like, apparently like there was like sort of a everything was based in real life up until like a certain point in the first book. Maybe he and his best friend really did go to the circus, and he really did have a pet tarantula at one point. But then things,
I believe it.
Yeah, and then things just diverged wildly from like the Darren Shan of real life and the Darren Shan who Oh, Ryan Reynolds is always playing Ryan Reynolds, with the acting equivalent of self-insert is.
It's never a movie that Ryan Reynolds is in. It's a Ryan Reynolds movie about Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah. So, even in Detective Pikachu, yeah.
Especially in Detective Pikachu.
That was such a good movie. I saw it in Japan, so it was so much fun. I was like, oh, anyway. Like, oh yeah, let's just watch Detective Pikachu now. Let's see. But so yeah, in Cirque du Freak, um, the main character like becomes a vampire, and like he sort of like chronicles his adventures and stuff, and it's meant to give the idea of being a self insert is meant to give like that extra layer of maybe this really happens, kind of like real person involved here. So maybe not all of this is entirely fiction. Oops, sorry. No, Hussy, go away. Um, you've ruined my life enough, Hussy. Okay. So, and I'll say an honorable mention to Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events, because Lemony Snicket is himself a fictional author who is inserted into the story, like the actual person who goes on book tours and stuff like that always is that he's like acting on behalf of Lemony Snicket, who always gets into some sort of like horrible uh like horrible accident just before the just before everything just before they're supposed to just before he's supposed to make his appearance, and so he's never quite there. Oh, Neko Prankster. I feel like many actors are like that now. Okay, yeah. And welcome to the channel. It's nice to have you here. All right. So yeah, so I'd say like, Lemony Snicket, he is like a character in the story, but he's also a fictional author of the actual author. And so it's like a bit of it's a complicated web they weave. So, no, Hussy, go away. Andrew Hussy just wants to ruin my life, I swear. Okay, but why do people do self-inserts? Like, why do oh yeah, Daniel Handler's alter ego, yeah. So now self-inserts can, as I mentioned, be used for endless meta content. You can talk about being a writer, like like Hussey did, like being a writer interacting with his own story, or like some sort of meta commentary about creation um, and the product of that creative mind and stuff like that. You can also use it for self-reflection and introspection. Like, consider what it would mean to have to to know yourself well enough and be like and have that kind of courage to put yourself on paper. And I've actually learned a lot about myself from writing self-inserts. Not like my earlier self-insert from when I was like 14, but my current self-insert project, I'm learning a lot from writing her. And of course, the extra layer of realism. I'm by putting myself into my story, I'm drawing from my own experiences and from and from my own history, my the sort of real world context in which I exist now, and I've sort of isekai'd myself into a more fantastical world. Okay, but wait, cringe? Yeah, what do we say to cringe? Cringe is dead. Don't worry about cringe. It's yeah, they happen subconsciously. Yeah, it happens sometimes. Yeah. So yeah, cringe is dead. So don't worry about that. Like these days people are much more open about OCs and self inserts and stuff like that. The passage from the book that I read was back from 2009, so 2008, sorry, 2008. So that that was back in the day. That was we don't have to worry about that anymore. So now how do you make a self-insert character? That's the neat part. You don't, because it's already your character. It's already you. So, no, seriously, okay. But so characters are simplified people. Like that's my sort of that's the idea that I'd like to put forward. So you have to figure out which parts of yourself are worth highlighting and would work best in the story. So don't be afraid to let yourself insert character fail, be wrong, or look dumb, because those are sort of parts of life. And if you shield your character from that, if you sort of like put that, if you're like too precious with them and you like put that little bubble around them, then it's like you're not giving them the same, you're not treating them like the other characters. So also, but like on the other hand though, you don't want to like completely rob your self-insert character of any like crowning moments of awesome, or like like letting them shine in some ways, because all your like main characters or even some of your side characters need chances to shine and endear themselves to the audience. So it's not really you. You have to remember that it's you in character form. You have to sort of compartmentalize this idea. So you treat yourself insert like any other character with their own wants, needs, ideals, flaws, and strengths. And then you just treat them like any character, and then they'll be engaging and interesting to read about. Surely no one parts of myself are 100% in my book, says Coffee Quills. Yeah, so yeah, like yeah, of course you have to, you sort of can't not write yourself into a book, I think. If you write yourself into a story, like if you're writing a story, there's always going to be some part of you involved in that. But the uh oh, hi. Oh, Natalia, nice to have you here. Um, Wrote myself into my books. I'm not even hiding it. Yes, that's what we like. Be proud. Um, let's see. But yeah, it's so let's see. So does anyone have any questions so far? We are 30 minutes into the presentation. Whoops. We are 30 minutes into the presentation, and we are going to start the panel discussion after a few questions. And I'm going to take a little tea break. Hydrate or dihydrate? Hydrate or die straight. There we go.
Great. I better hydrate.
Yeah.
I don't want to die straight.
Oh no, heavens. And this is another mug. It says, I think, life is simple, it's just not easy.
Hi, Nearly. Is the laptop okay? I'm sure it's fine. It's been beaten up worse than that.
Oh.
My laptop is currently being held together with hot glue, so it's probably fine.
Oh.
I
think every character has a little bit of yourself in it. Yeah, I think that's true.
Definitely. I think as well, like on the subject of like not being afraid to make your character have flaws and not being afraid to make them have their shining moment. I think a good example of where that went wrong was actually Bella Swan in Twilight. Because the main problem with her wasn't that she was a self-insert of Stephenie Meyer, which she was. It was more that it seemed like Stephenie Meyer was so scared of portraying herself in a positive light that she actually made herself boring.
Yeah.
I think like with writing self-inserts, an important part, if you're like doing it deliberately, is to think about, is to be able to look at yourself objectively. Or not take yourself seriously. One or the other. You
Yeah.
like, because I think the problem that happened was that Stephanie Meyer was so self-depreciating in the way that she wrote Bella that it just became exhausting.
Yeah.
And then because it was a big power fantasy, and after she gets turned into a vampire, she's afraid to give herself any flaws.
Yeah.
So it just becomes it just got messy, and I think that's why a lot of people think that self-inserts are inherently bad, is because the ones that we think of as being obviously self-inserts are the ones where the author doesn't know how to look at themselves objectively and tries to write themselves either too perfect or too flawed rather than just being a character.
Yeah, so we have a question from Katie May Wright. Would Ariadne Oliver by Agatha Christie count, or would she be considered more of a foil? So I actually haven't read Agatha Christie. Have you, Raven?
I have not, but I am going to just look it up just to see if anyone's got anything to say about it.
Okay. Yeah, it's like for me, with my examples that I've given, I've had like you know, like they're supposed to be like the author themselves be um uh uh so again, there's that sort of line between like, you know, author surrogates versus author self, between like a true self insert. What I've been focusing on are the true self inserts, where it's like, you know, it is not a character that just looks like you and acts like you in some way, but is actually you in some ways. Like so my character in my story a long and twisting river is actually me, but has been isekai'd into a fantasy setting. And she goes by a different name, but and there's always like there's a bit of a joke where, like, in order to not dox myself and my family, I just never say her name. Like, I always like get up to the point, or they like mention that they say her birth name, but they don't actually say what it is, because so they'll say her, like, they'll say like, yes, her name was, like, you know, long and foreign sounding, and like, you know, and much too strange to actually use in conversation, because like it's a Chinese setting, and so they would use, like, you know, they're used to using like full names in, like, it's a fantasy Chinese fan fiction setting where they're used to using like full names, and my full name, which I'm not going to say now, is, like, you know, 6 syllables long, which would be ungainly for, you know, polite society in Chinese culture. So it would just, so yeah.
On the subject of Ariadne Oliver, according to the internet, Agatha Christie uses the character of Ariadne Oliver to gently satirize her career. So there are a couple of like her personal characteristics, but she's more of like a surrogate, or I think.
Yeah.
From what I can tell.
Mm.
Because it's like a meta joke about her career.
7 syllables here, I feel that. All right, yeah. Yeah, it's like yeah, it's the way it breaks down. So Amanda, of course, you have like 3 syllables, and then Panda is another 2 syllable. No, that's so yeah, 3 syllables, 2 syllables, 1 syllable for my name, but for like my first, middle, last name. And that's another thing in China, and as well as in Japan, they don't really have middle names. So it's just like, wait, why did your mom give you 3 names? I only have 2.
You get 3 names.
Yeah, why do you get 3 names? Yeah. But also, to be fair, all of the characters have like multiple names that they go by. So it's like, you know, you have Yeah, but anyway, I won't get into that too much. Kathy Reichs and Bones is a good example of self-insert, I think. Kathy Reichs. Who's that? I'm so like ill-informed. I'm just like yeah, I was like specifically looking at like people who are like themselves, like characters that are the author. But but yeah, so I guess username without doxing myself. My IRL name is very long and helped along by the Greek first name. Okay. If you want short character names, stay away from the Mediterranean.
True that.
Yeah, Amanda is also is technically Mediterranean. It's a Latin name, means she must be loved.
Oh.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna reverse search that. What was I saying?
I don't know. I don't know what you were saying. Kathy, were you looking up Kathy Reichs or
I
Bone?
was, yeah. Kathy Wright.
Yeah. I hope you all like my presentation, by the way. Like the little PowerPoint. I just like, wanted to I was thinking about actually including because I wasn't quite sure, but see, the first novel ever could arguably have included a self-insert because the first like purportedly the first novel was Lady Murasaki's Genji Monogatari, or the Tale of Genji. But the thing about like the Heian court was that it was very vulgar to use your actual name, or to use anyone's like actual name. So they use like all of these like pseudonyms and epithets. And so there is a character that is called Murasaki. And of course, like Lady Murasaki probably wasn't even her real name, wasn't even the author's real name, but there was a character, the Lady of the West Hall, who is also referred to sometimes as Murasaki. And so I was trying to decide if that counted as a self-insert, but it's very like the life of Heian woman is like very much even though we do have this wonderful source of Genji Monogatari as well as the diaries of Lady Murasaki, we sort of like it's hard to tell like if Murasaki, the character, was deliberately meant to be a self-insert, because there's all of these like obfuscations surrounding the names. Kathy Reichs is a forensic anthropologist who works with the FBI, wrote a series of murder mystery books about Temperance Brennan, a forensic anthropologist who solves crimes with the FBI. Oh, okay. So okay, so it sounds like, yeah, it's like this yeah, again, I'm thinking that might be more of like that could be a self-insert, but it could be like more of like an author surrogate, um where it's like it's not the author as a character, it's the author creating a character who is very similar to them, which I know is like maybe it's a distinction without a difference, but I sort of feel like there's one.
I think it's tough because when most people, at least these days, think of self-inserts, they think of any form of explicit this character is based on me, or this character has my personality traits. Like it
Yeah.
seems to have it's spread to be like a taboo of even injecting yourself into characters at all.
Yeah.
Which is just ridiculous
Yeah.
because
You put too much of yourself into this book which you are writing,
from
then
your brain.
from your then then you are committing a sin and a crime against literature. Actually, that's why I was so afraid of posting my fic online, because I was like, oh gosh, I'm gonna be eaten alive. Like, when people like read about this self-insert character. I've gotten 0 negative comments on the character so far. I was so worried, but I'm like, I would like start when I was looking for beta readers, I'm like, I must confess my fandom sin. I was like, I felt like I was a little Catholic girl again. I was like, oh gosh, I'm gonna anger the fandom gods.
Like with self-inserts in fan fiction especially, it's a really good way to explore setting and character development when you're maybe not that confident in creating everything from scratch.
Yeah.
So, like, my start in writing was with self-inserts. I put myself in everything that I watched and remotely liked.
Mm-hmm.
And just over time, just naturally, they sort of branched off and became their own characters just based on, like,
Mm-hmm.
because of the circumstances that they went through in the stories.
Yeah.
They eventually just became completely separate people to me, even if they started that way.
Yeah, that's also an interesting thing I've noticed with my characters, because like, she goes through 10 years in the story, and I'm like, yeah, she becomes a completely different person from me by the end of that. It's like, she's like, in a new culture, and she's learning, this all of this stuff, and she's going through all sorts of like experiences that I'm never going to have. So it does like diverge in a lot of ways.
I think that's why the line has gotten so blurry with what people consider to be a self-insert, because when a self-insert character is written well,
Mhm.
they become indistinguishable from a regular character.
Yeah.
Like, I think the best way to like explain self-inserts to people who maybe like don't understand the writing process or whatever
Mhm.
is video games
Yeah.
where you can create your own character. Like, I know that my uh Dragon Age character was very much a self-insert. I
Yeah.
make someone who is like a version of me, and I see how I'm going to react through that game, and then I take all of that and spit it out as fan fiction. So I think self-inserts are so common
Mhm.
that people just don't notice them anymore. And that's why people think they're bad, because when you do notice them, it's usually because there's something wrong.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like if you're noticing, like, and Ensign Mary Sue was just loved by everyone. like the original, like, the original fic. Oh, Lady Wrights, welcome and thank you so much for the bits. Arigato gozaimasu. Um, oh, it is so good to have you here. So yes, unfortunately none of my alerts are going off because well, I don't have my usual setup because I'm not in Japan. So, oh, and if you haven't already, you can feel free to give me a follow, and of course, the lovely Sometimes Raven. Do you have a Twitch channel, Raven?
I do.
Is it Sometimes Raven?
It is.
Let me shout. Oh, hi. Sometimes Raven. There you go. All right, hydrate or dihydrate, or hydrate or die straight. Yeah, you especially don't want to die straight during Pride Month. I mean, how?
God, no.
Oh Lord. Yeah. So, now we also have some. So we were just talking about like how when a self insert is done well, you don't notice that they're a self insert because they're just another character. Um, what are some more of those pitfalls? And we also have some commentary from some comments. Did you have a chance to, Raven? Did you have a chance to take a look through the comments of?
But I also have them up right now.
Oh, same here. Oh, I see you as an anonymous mink in the Google Doc.
Hello.
Raven does all sorts: RPG, games, writing stuff, and occasionally music. Very talented bird. Okay. Yes. Scarlet Blaze TV. Yes, so go follow Raven. I can't actually tell if I think like some people like followed me yesterday, but I didn't say anything because I didn't notice, because I didn't see oh, Twitch activity feed. Derp. There we go. Let me grab that. So hydrate, bits. Scarlet Blaze TV, thank you for the follow. Sometimes Raven, thank you for the follow. And yesterday, Kayatan writes, Writer Lee, and Games GM all followed. Thank you all so much. All right. So yes, I'll be able to keep an eye on the activity feed now. But yeah, so we have a couple different comments that I collected from writers on For the Words, the forums. I asked like, hey, I said like, hey, I'm doing some research about self-inserts, and I thought it would be fun to get some information. So we have some comments. Maybe we can read through some and comment on the comments.
It's like a plan.
All right. So Sapless Tree commented, I'm indifferent. Okay, let's see. These thoughts all come from someone who writes as a hobby, so my answer may reflect that. Someone who has written published works or writes for their career may have a different opinion other than me. I don't really think there is any harm in self-inserts for original fiction or fan fiction. At worst, you have a plain or boring character and some iffy writing. At best, you have a character that feels realistically like a fully fleshed person because they are one simply inserted into fiction. I'm not one that writes self-inserts, but I definitely believe they have a valid place in writing fiction. For fan fiction especially, I say go for it. 100% write as many self-inserts, 100% write as many self-inserts as you want. Fan fiction is meant to be self-indulgent and fun. At the end of the day, if writing yourself into whatever your given fandom makes you happy, do that. The story franchise is already an established thing. It's not like an author is going to make money or sending these works to professional editors or publishers or anything. So it's okay if these things aren't perfect, and it's okay to indulge in some self-fulfillment. For original works, it is a bit trickier because most authors do want their original works to be at least in some form published. You have to be mindful about how you'd write a self-insert character here. I think it can be done well. The main problem I see with self-inserts isn't the fact that it's a character based on the author. In fact, that's rarely the problem. The problem I see with how the character is handled. Self-inserts tend to have a significantly higher importance placed on them for no story-supported reason, are dramatically overpowered, and or have few to no character flaws. It's things like this that give self-inserts a bad rap, in my opinion, when these issues seem to stem more simply from weak writing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So overall, I think authors should write what they like to write, and if that happens to be them with better hair inserted into the world, then so be it.
Me?
Me. Oh well, actually no, I do have my same hair in the story. It's always like, oh my gosh, your hair is curly. What?
I always have better hair.
Well, it's like I've taken like it's taken a long process for me to really like my hair. You know, it's like I feel like I feel like one thing is that like when you're writing self-inserts, you really have to like, you have to be comfortable with yourself in a lot of ways.
Yeah, like I said, it's very much being able to look at yourself objectively.
Yeah. Or at least subjectively in fun ways.
Yeah.
Nearly Not Quite. Thank you very much for the follow. Arigato gozaimasu.
Hey.
Welcome. All right. So, do you want to take the next comment?
Yeah. Anonymous said, I've used self-insert characters before, usually as side characters in works that are more personal to me. I previously didn't see a problem with that since they weren't Mary Sue's, and I feel like it was both helpful to the story and to my process of working out the emotions associated with the personal issue at the center of the plot. However, I've moved away from that mainly because readers were constantly complaining about those characters, usually about how unlikable they were. Not great for the old self-esteem, so I've stopped doing that until either I become more likable or get less critical writing buddies. Kind of embarrassed about that, so blah blah. Right. That one. This ties into, again, what I was saying about where it goes wrong with self-insert characters a lot, because it sounds like to me that this person, just based on the way that they've talked about themselves and their character, it sounds like they don't have an objective or fun viewpoint of themselves. Because until I become more likable, feels like maybe you. I'm sure you are perfectly likable.
Yeah.
Like maybe it's less of a case of having to stop writing self-inserts altogether, and more of a case of looking to, like, asking your friends what they like about you.
Yeah.
Asking people what their first impressions of you are, how you appear to other people, trying to figure out how you look from the outside.
Yeah.
Because at the moment, they seem to be looking at themselves entirely from the inside. And if your self-esteem is low,
yeah,
you're gonna have an unlikable character because you think you're unlikable.
Yeah. Which could be maybe interesting for like an antagonist point of view, but like, maybe if you write like a character that's supposed to be hated. I've never seen that, like write a character that's supposed to be hated as a self-insert, but like, that's hateable on purpose, not like, hateable on accident. That could be interesting, like, having to fight some version of yourself that you don't like. That could be cathartic, but it also could be very destructive, so handle with care.
Yeah.
Therapist.
I remember years ago you got criticism on one of your characters like that, and now everyone loves her. I've had my fair share of weird criticism towards my old self-inserts, but I think the thing as well that you can do with self-inserts is take those parts of yourself that maybe you like or someone else has told you like, put them into that character, and it can be helpful for self-esteem.
Yeah.
Because the more I start liking characters that I see a lot of myself into, the more I realize that maybe I'm not that bad,
No, exactly, yeah. Cutsy Cat says, now I want to make a self-insert villain character. Go for
Do
it.
it.
We support here, and we support
Do it.
Which villains have, like, make sure that they are like, an epic villain and just, go all out. Villains have the most fun. Third breakdown, but yeah. All right. So we have Dakota commenting. Personally, I don't think it's a problem. The less seriously you're writing in terms of whether or not you want it published, the less of a problem it is. Now, if it's something you want published and are writing for fun or for your friends or whatever, it can be a little tricky. I think that sentence, if it's something you want published,
just writing for fun or for your friends or whatever, it can be a little tricky. Yeah.
They meant to say if you don't want published, and okay. So, do you want your characters to be believable? I guess they meant you do.
I think they meant if it's something you want published and are
Yeah.
not just writing for fun.
Yeah. Not just writing for fun. Yeah, it's like I'm like a knot was missing in there.
Yeah.
but I find that a lot of people have trouble making themselves seem believable. Either they overestimate themselves or they underestimate themselves. We aren't unbiased viewers of ourselves, and it makes it hard to create a character based on us that's pretty accurate because of that. The only issue I have it with it is when it's done poorly and it's not just a real person anymore. The character becomes bland because they're, oh, I can't read that word, on them too much, or because they're hyping them up so much, because they're not being nice on them too much, or because they're hyping them up too much.
Yeah, that again goes back to the problem that most people have with Bella Swan from Twilight.
Yeah.
Like, to start with, she's so self-depreciating that it becomes ridiculous, and
Yeah.
then once she gets her power fantasy and she becomes a vampire and gets her pretty boyfriend,
Yeah.
she's suddenly overhyped.
Yeah.
It's it always goes back to, I think, just
Yeah, and there's also like how the other characters interact with that character, because Bella Swan is sort of like a black void in which everything gets sort of sucked into.
that's the thing. Yeah, she's this like dull, supposedly completely dull, completely uninteresting, clumsy, ugly, boring character, according to herself.
Yeah.
And then everyone revolves around her as if she's the most special, amazing person in the world, and it's just that juxtaposition that I think just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's like, and I don't mean for this to be like, a hate on Twilight,
No,
thing.
no, not at all. I
You know,
think
like, if Twilight is your thing, then we don't have any, but it is still an interesting case study.
yeah, definitely.
But yeah, so like, you have to remember that your other characters are also valid, characters with their own deal that might not work out with it's like, they might have indifferent feelings towards your character, or they might
Allow someone to dislike you.
yeah, and not just the end. Like, I know, like, Bella had plenty of people that disliked her, but it was usually for very, like, superficial, shallow reasons.
Yeah,
Like,
they were
like, Ro
obviously in the wrong.
like, they were, with my self-insert character, a lot of characters do like her because she works really hard to try and, like, put on this, to try and, like, go out of her way to help people and stuff, but she does have people that are like, "I do not trust that kid," and it's like, I do not trust, because, she's like, so basically she's like a de-aged version, because what I sort of realized, what I was banking on, was that an adult woman wouldn't be as like welcomed into the setting, by the fandom, as a young child would.
Mm.
I de-aged the character, but kept, like, I have like a sort of like a magical like de-aging thing where she's like 10 years old but has like my 30-year-old mind, all of my
Nice.
memory stuff. And because I was afraid that, like, well, if I insert an adult woman into the story, then people would, not warm up to her as easily as a child. Like, I thought like a child would be more readily acceptable by the readers than a grown woman.
Mm.
And I mean, so far, I like, things seem to be going all right. We'll see as the character ages, because she's going to go from 10 to 20, as the story progresses. Um, it'll be interesting to see if reader viewership, if like reader opinion changes as they see her, like, grow up. Um, because one of the things that I want to tackle in the story is this idea of like exoticization of different people. I faced that a lot in my life, being a biracial person in America, and then going and living in Japan, where I'm a very visibly not Japanese, and having to deal with that sort of like unique othering of being considered like, in some ways like desirable, but in like a sort of yikes way. I was like, oh man, it's like so that's like some real world thing that I'm bringing in. And another real world thing that I'm bringing in is like, I'm bringing in my family history to like explain certain, because my character explains certain concepts to a child. um they get onto the topic of like names, and they end up having this conversation about my family history, which includes the North Atlantic slave trade, because my father is African American, and my family history is like this thing of diaspora and being separated from one's culture. So um there's like, I'm like, oh man, I'm sort of like excited to have that chapter in, and to have like, this conversation, because it's like, you're bringing the real world into this very fantasy setting, and sort of like seeing how this all interacts with each other.
To pick your brain about that one.
Oh, oh yeah,
I have,
absolutely. I'll
yeah.
send one, but
Should we go on to the next one?
sure thing.
Where were we?
We were just finished Dakota, so now it's rewrite.
Rewrite. Rewrite says, in fanfiction especially, I think people should be free to write whatever they want to write. I personally tend to not read a ton of advertised self-insert fanfic, because so often I find self-inserts too Mary Sue-ish, and the other characters often do things that don't fit their personalities. But I think the beauty of fanfic isn't that it's necessarily for the reader. It's a way for the writer to experience a piece of media that they love in a different way. If writing a self-insert or angst or fluff or anything else brings joy to the writer but doesn't jive with my preferences as a reader, I don't have to read it. No harm done. If the writing is going to be published, I have the same opinion about self-inserts as I do about pretty much every other aspect of writing. If it's done well, awesome. More power to the writer. If the character feels like a real three-dimensional character, I don't care who they're based on. If it's not done well, then I still don't have to read it, and there's still no harm done.
Yeah.
I think that's very important mindset to have as well, is the old early fan fiction days, don't like, don't read.
Yeah, there we go. I was about to say. The words of the words of our people.
Let me sing you the song of my people.
Yeah, so
I think we should probably go into why we're both a little bit very grossed out by the Mary Sue concept.
Go ahead, you
So I
start.
realized we didn't really explain that very much at all. It's not a problem. I don't have a problem with people using the term Mary Sue, because it has just become like a colloquialism now. People just use it to mean a badly written character. But I think it's important for people to note that the term Mary Sue, especially in relation to fanfiction and self-inserts, is largely rooted in ageism and misogyny. Because the term came around specifically, that's why it's a female name, to describe teenage girls exploring their growing and changing emotions through the medium of fanfiction and self-inserts. And people saw that and they went, I don't like this thing that you're doing. I'm going to create an entire term and culture based around how bad that thing that you're doing is.
Yeah.
And then they will turn around and praise the same thing that a man has done.
Yeah, it's like
And that is why Mary Sue is a female name.
Yeah.
There is Marty Stew, but when was the last time you heard that?
Yeah, it's like usually like an overpowered male protagonist is just called like wish fulfillment, and doesn't necessarily have that kind of it's like it's not been like colloquialized to such a point. It's like it's not been made into such like a it's such a like oh, what's the word I'm looking for? It's just such like biting like it's used so quickly into like meaning like a lot of like female character I don't like, or female character that I think has too much power or agency. And it's like I feel like my character, I was like afraid that I like, of course, when I was first writing my character in my fanfic, oh, you've also heard, Swiftness author has also heard of Gary Stu. Yeah, I've heard of Gary Stu too.
Yeah. It's not used very commonly though.
Right. It's like usually like it's more common, I think, to see like Mary Sue being applied to men versus like Gary Stu or Marty Stu, because the term has just become so ubiquitous that like it's sort of like but it still has like a very heavily female connotation. So it's sort of like you're feminizing the male character, which is supposed to be like a greater insult. So which of course is deeply rooted in misogyny. So
Definitely. And I think that's a lot of the culture going against self-inserts come from that place of just disdain towards teenage girls doing what teenage girls do.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of things that we consider to be inherently bad in media as a whole come from that same place of being just something that teenage girls do or like, therefore it's bad or it's cringe.
Yeah, and that's why I sort of want to veer away from like, Twilight hate, because like it is something that like,
I bring up Bella Swan because she's the only well-known actual explicit self-insert character that I actually know anything about.
Yeah, so.
And I don't want to go into a tangent talking about the series that should not be named, written by the TERF who should not be named.
Yep, we do not stand. No longer. But
there are definitely a lot of male characters that fall into the same pitfalls. It's just that they're not usually largely seen as bad.
Yeah, they're not usually seen as bad, and they're not usually seen as like, oh, it's just the author like gratuitously trying to like fulfill some fantasy. It's just like, oh, this character.
This character is really cool.
Yeah, I can't examples right now. I'm just
I can think of examples of characters I think fall into the poorly written.
Yeah.
Like the tropes that make people think of bad self-inserts.
Like
but I can't think of any that are actually self-inserts.
It's like I know that there are some like there's like in like men writing women and stuff like that. There's like they always talk about like the professor or whatever type like the character like in literary fiction where it's like this is clearly the author writing about I love Evil Dead, but that is one long Sam Raimi,
I'm so cool montage. I was actually going to say I'm going to cause a lot of controversy now.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that the character on the top of my head that's most recently relevant that I can think of that falls into the perfect, vaguely flawed, but mostly like everything that you think of when you think of a Mary Sue.
Yeah.
Is Doctor Strange.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
In the MCU.
I haven't seen the new movie, so.
Yeah, I think he falls into that to me. Especially as well, I think one of the biggest tropes that we consider. Well, we don't. We're opening our eyes towards it, but I think a lot of like the mainstream culture still doesn't see that it's bad. Is the white savior trope.
Yeah.
Always men.
Always men.
Always men who just swoop into this culture that isn't theirs and save everyone, and they're the greatest.
Yeah, actually, that was something that I was sort of afraid of going into my story because my character, she's not white, she's biracial.
Except Khaleesi, but she's well written. Except when she isn't. We don't talk about that.
But let's see, the thing with my character, because she's going into, China, a place where I've never actually been, I don't speak the language. I do have a very good cultural sensitivity reader who's been like phenomenal, helping me, like, an actual, like, Chinese person who's helping me with all that stuff. But I was afraid, like, I'm like, oh well, she's technically going in and, like, saving some people from dying because she knows some, because basically it's one of the stories where it's like she enters the story of the fan fiction world, and like it's like, hey, I know what's gonna happen, I know the future, I'm gonna, like, tell you about this so that these people don't die. And but the problem is that she doesn't speak Chinese, and everyone there speaks Chinese, and so she had to learn real quick.
Yeah. I think that's like my problem with the MCU's Doctor Strange specifically is that he is a white man
Yeah.
who essentially becomes the most powerful of this culture that he doesn't even respect.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Like he doesn't even follow their customs or anything, like the most basic stuff.
Oh wow.
And he is considered one of the best MCU characters by a lot of people.
Oh wow.
And I just don't see it. Because if a female character did the exact same stuff, you would not hear the end of it.
Yeah. What are the stories that are the equivalent of Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman?
I have heard of that, but I know nothing.
The only Dr. Quinn I know is Harley Quinn.
Yeah. We are uncultured swine, apparently.
I'm a woman of culture.
Totally. I too
Yeah.
am culture.
Person of an envy of culture, yes.
Yes. I've heard of isn't she like
I don't know.
the most similar thing I can think of to that is White Lady Doctor in the Wild West. Yeah. I was gonna say the most similar one I could think of would be possibly Outlander that I've actually absorbed, but that's a little different because she's a modern woman in 1700s Scotland. But yeah,
Lacuna Senio, thank you very much for the hydrate. Come back. All right. Hello. Oh, look at that cute little emote. I love it. I'm gonna put in an emote myself. Let me see. Where's my little panda? Here's my little panda heart for you.
Outlander, one of the most popular fan fictions. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. But that's an example of one that's done well.
Yeah.
You know, Outlander is essentially a self-insert Doctor Who fan fiction. It is. It literally is. But people love it. I love it.
I've never seen it actually. Yes,
it's
cultured.
Well, I love it up to a point.
Yeah.
It goes a little bit downhill, in my opinion. I haven't seen it since a couple of episodes vexed me.
Oh, the movie The Blind Side or Dangerous Minds. I know Dangerous Minds. Isn't that like a sort of like a Freedom Writers where they have like a white teacher coming into like a class mainly of like POC and like, just helping them out of their, like, I know there are a lot of stories like that. And I did like Freedom Writers, I'm not gonna lie. I did I like a lot of stories about teachers, but and especially since like apparently that was based on like a real story, like with like the actual words of the kids being used. But I've never seen Dangerous Minds, so I don't know how that is. Actually, on that note, I do want to read the next comment. really quick because it's like my favorite because it's from another teacher. Unless you had something else, I'll let you uh, finish looking up what you were looking up though.
Just looking at Dangerous Minds.
Oh, all right.
I
So those days commented, I am a teacher, so teachers represent, and I tell students that writing about themselves in fantastic situations is a great way to get the creativity flowing. If they don't know what to write, I tell them to imagine they're a fairy or Thor or whatever I know they're interested in and write about an adventure. They love it. I would be interested to know like um how like what the age ranges this person teaches. So when I was younger, it was supposed to be super embarrassing to write self-inserts, but I'm seeing more and more of that in fiction, especially fan fiction is shedding that, and I'm thrilled. And I think it's a lot of fun. And honestly, if the writer is good enough, you can't tell because you don't know them. I could write a story about me going on a time travel adventure, but unless you know me personally, it's just a character going on an adventure. Um, Along those lines, the emergence of imagines where your name meets and usually falls in love with a fictional or fictionalized character along the same lines. They're not my cup of tea, but I love that people feel free to write them and read them if they enjoy them. Writing is an act of creativity, and far be it from anyone to tell someone that they're being creative wrong.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree with pretty much everything there. Like not
yeah.
yeah. Like I said, my start in writing came from a similar thing that
Mhm.
that this person was talking about, where like I used to just imagine myself in the pieces of media that I was hyperfixated on at the time. I mean, one of my oldest self-inserts is almost unrecognizable as a self-insert now, but she started as what if I was in the Doctor Who universe and Doctor Who was my dad.
Yo, cool.
Because that's what I wanted, so I
Yeah,
wrote about it.
yeah. Well, I'm thinking like I'm also like sort of thinking back to some of my first self-insert fan fiction because when I was young, my hyperfixation was Yu Yu Hakusho, this one anime, um, from like the 80s 90s, but like yeah, I came to America in the 90s. Um, and, uh,
Sorry.
not to me, she isn't. No. so so this anime was Urameshi, yeah. Yeah, Yusuke Urameshi. He was so cool. I it took me like until I moved to Japan to figure out that Urameshi was a pun. And I was like so mad when I was so happy but so mad when I found out. But anyway, when I was writing, I was really hyper focused on that romance between like my self-insert character and the character Kurama. And I really wanted, and I focused on that to the exclusion of really like, looking into things the um the culture of Japan. Like I remember like I would write like very Americanized things into my story. I didn't really integrate the setting very well because I was like what 12 or 14 or no, I think when I wrote this I was still in middle school. I was like 11 or 12 when I wrote this thing that I'm thinking about. And I remember I was not like like you know I mean I definitely wrote it wasn't like a good character. It wasn't a very interesting story, but I made my mom read it anyway. But my poor long suffering mother. Um so so yeah, I just feel like one of the things is that like I sort of like imposed myself into this world that I liked, but I didn't really think of all of the ramifications of that. I didn't think about like the way I do now, like my character having to learn Chinese and having to learn about Chinese culture, like whereas my younger self-inserted self didn't really like understand Japan, didn't like speak any Japanese to the level that I do now. Um, sort of made cultural assumptions that things were going to be similar across cultures, and and which made for a much less interesting story than what I can create now.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, it's like I didn't really think about it because it was just like, wanting to do that. Well, we're running a little low on time,
We
but
are. Yeah, I was gonna say we've only got like 5 minutes left.
um yeah, I don't know if we're allowed to run over or not because it's hydrate. You gotta hydrate.
This counts, right?
Absolutely. Thank you, Lady Rights. All right. So we do have a few more comments, but some of them are a little bit long.
Bit long, yeah.
Yeah. But basically, a lot of them have like very similar, a lot of we see a lot of similar threads in the, although let's see. Although I thought Casme 92 made an interesting point. Let's see. It's when we get into for-profit public, like they basically said, like, okay, self-insert and fan fiction tend to be first-time writing indicators to me because someone wants to play out a fantasy. But whether the author likes it or not, people now get to offer opinions on the character, good or ill, and if the character is a direct reflection of you, feelings get hurt. All characters have some similarities to their authors. I tend towards writing bisexual women because I am one. Things like that happen and you don't always intend it. But it's when the character is just a better looking, more successful hand puppet used to spout the author's views that I begin to sour on it. Self-inserts can be extremely prone to suishness. They use that word. And protagonist-centered morality, which, that's definitely so that for those who don't know, protagonist-centered morality is basically like the protagonist does it, therefore it's okay, versus, the series which shall not be named is very guilty of this.
Super guilty.
I think mainstreaming of portal fantasy has led to the acceptance of the self-insert character. Yeah, so more isekai has I always use the Japanese term because I'm a woman of culture. No. We're gonna use that. So the isekai has definitely opened it up to that.
Your personality type is literally the protagonist.
Yeah. Okay. So starting with yourself as a base is fine, as long as your base is not a jerk and you can take criticism. Yeah.
Again, series which must not be named was fell into that.
But yeah.
I think just very quickly as well, there's a comment at the bottom, Beyonce WK, that I think is very important.
Okay.
The project I'm currently writing has a plus-size central character. I want to write this character because as a plus-size woman, there's a huge lack of representation, especially in romance, so naturally some of my experiences will overlap. And I think that's a really important thing as well, is for a lot of people, self-inserts are a form of representation. It's the only way that they can see themselves represented in whatever form of media that they're into. I think that's just a little important little detail that a lot of people tend to not think about.
Yeah, it's definitely important. I am big on representation and trying and of course my in the story I'm writing, all the characters are, except with the exception of my character, are all Han Chinese, and it's just so it's just interesting to see how that all plays with each other. So we'll have to talk more about this stuff. It's very interesting, and I've definitely had a lot of fun. Do we have any other questions from the audience? Because we are running a little low on time.
Need to ask for a follow-up.
Oh yeah.
Room.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because I would definitely love to pick your brain about stuff, and I know you mentioned that you'd like to pick my brain about some things. So, but
You are the protagonist of the world, Blaze.
yeah, just not the protagonist of the world. Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, you're the protagonist of your own story. So, although sometimes I'm the protagonist of
I'm
my
not.
way all the time.
I'm definitely not.
Yeah.
I'm definitely a side character in Blaze's story.
It's been my life's ambition to be a helpful NPC.
Yep, that's me. I
Yeah.
even recycled the same 5 lines of dialogue when I run out of things to say.
We are all the protagonists of our. Amanda took the words out of my mouth. Oh, sorry. Sometimes when you and your character share a same marginalization, people assume you wrote a self-insert. That's an interesting
That
thing.
too, yeah. Which, again, that goes even. I think that assumption goes even deeper than the misogynistic idea of the Mary Sue, and it starts to become more reflective of the problems in society as a whole. Because if you see someone representing themselves in a book and you immediately think, oh, self-insert, bad. Implications.
All right. Who let that happen? No wonder it's okay. All right. This sure needs a part 2. There's a lot more to unpack here. Yeah, definitely.
Definitely. How do we go about getting a follow-up room in the Discord? So I've noticed those pop up after a few places.
Yeah, we'll have to.
Hey
Yeah.
Mez, you're one of the dragons. You can do it for us, right?
Yeah. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for joining. And thank you so much, sometimes Raven, for your wonderful help and being awesome and the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Thanks for having me and babbling, letting me babble. Oh, we were just asking if we could have a follow-up channel in the Discord because there's so much to talk about.
All right, then. Well, everyone, thank you so much. I'm going to have us raid out and I'll do my little outro. Raven, if you have anything else you'd like to say to the lovely peoples.
Follow me on twitch.tv/sometimesraven. I am also available on TikTok under Raven Elliott. My book, Reckless Truth, an urban fantasy LGBT novel, is available on Amazon. You can find all of the links on my Twitch channel. Yay.
I think it's Writers Conduit, right? It has been great. Awesome. All right, everyone. Well, thank you very much for joining me today. Your homework tonight: go forth, be kind, be awesome, stay safe, and have a good one. Oh, nice book. All right. This has been AmandaPandaSensi and sometimes Raven. And our raid calls are Panda Raid or Schools Out or any combination of the two. You can decide. And I'll see you next time. Thank you very much. Class dismissed. Bye-bye.
We're done. We're done. Right?
Yep. Sorry. And I'm going to stop the stream.